Welcome to the ATM Insights series, brought to you by Arabian Travel Market, the leading international travel and tourism event now in its 33rd year. Each year, ATM gathers the global travel and tourism community in Dubai with more than 55,000 attendees from more than 166 countries to share ideas, do business, and shape the future of tourism. Hello and welcome. I'm really pleased today to be joined by Joanne Wiggan and Ashley Levy from Red Sea Global and PADI. We're going to be having a really great conversation today about how to leverage partnerships around sports tourism. But I won't take up too much of the time. I would just love to jump straight in and say hello to both of you and welcome to this podcast today.
Thanks for having us. There's loads to talk about. Just as a quick intro, as you said, I'm Joanne Wiggan. I work for Red Sea Global, which is the development company who is the visionary behind redefining tourism in Saudi Arabia. But specifically, I actually work for Red Sea Sports and Entertainment, which basically means that when you go beyond the beautiful destinations and the iconic hotels and the iconic landscapes, most tourists will then say, what do I do when I get there? So my role is all of the wonderful experiences and activities and showcasing those to the world.
Fantastic. Great to have you on the show. And Ashley, very nice to meet you. Tell us a bit about your role.
Thank you. For sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ashley Levy, like you said, and I'm the Director of Marketing Communications at PADI. So I lead our global brand storytelling, partnerships, our channel marketing to bring more people really into diving and get them excited and engaged in the sport of diving around the world. And PADI is the world's largest diving organization. And our mission is to create 1 billion torchbearers who explore and protect the ocean.
Amazing. That's quite a mission. And of course, Red Sea Global has been rapidly developing an incredible destination brand and product. So let's get started with that. And I'd love to know how you guys came together. What was this thing that really made sense for you both when looking at this partnership? And tell us a bit about the essence of that.
Ashley can probably give a little bit more context behind the relationship, the operational relationship that exists between PADI and Red Sea Global. Obviously, Red Sea Global Sports and Entertainment, it does have a diving brand, which is Galaxia. And our diving brand has to abide by the PADI regulations and we have to excel in terms of quality and services. But where Ashley and I came into it was, okay, beyond that, how do we tell the narrative around the brands together, the amazing locations, the destinations, and the diving experiences? So that's where we got together and started getting our heads and thinking about what we could do.
Amazing. And tell me, Ashley, what does PADI bring here? Obviously, I think for our audience, most of them will know about PADI, but perhaps not all of them. So give us a bit of context there about where PADI connects with this incredible product that's being developed in Red Sea.
Yeah, there was definitely an alignment, I think, on mission too, which is really interesting because our mission's aligned, as I mentioned, like PADI, our purpose and our mission is to create 1 billion torchbearers to explore that and protect the underwater world. It's really important. And I think that RSG Red Sea Global is one of the destinations in Saudi that they're building this really regenerative area of travel. And it's really exciting because that's how we aligned. And this marine environment is so important to PADI. That's it's our core. It's what we want to do and as divers, we can really protect this underwater world. And I think that Saudi has this healthy, biodiverse, really just incredible, naturally resilient area underwater. And so the way PADI came in is we were able to bring divers into this area that's growing and it's new and upcoming. And we want these divers and our ambassador divers to showcase this underwater world through their eyes. And that's really only something you can do as a diver underwater and see that underwater world and explore it and then share it with your friends and family. So I think that's where PADI comes in. We're the biggest diving training organization, but we have these amazing people, these amazing divers who wanted to tell their story, wanted to go and visit different destinations around the world and explore. And Saudi is one of the best out there. And so it was really exciting for us to collaborate on a project like that.
And just to build on that, what I think when we look at brand partners and strategically we think about who do we want to work with, Red Sea Global does have 3 values, which are everybody who works with Red Sea Global is very passionate about, which is people, place, and planet. And I think particularly that last one around planet, I think when you look at what PADI's brand values are, there's a really, really close alignment there. So that was a very easy tick in the box for us to work. But I think beyond that, we also look at the global reach. So we need to make sure that it's not just Saudi Arabian divers who want to come and dive in the region. It's not just GCC, but actually working with a partner that has that global reach, which PADI absolutely does. And I think the third one for me is around trust and credibility, right? So PADI are absolutely the number one diving brand that everybody sees as being that credible and authentic brand that they trust. For us, it absolutely had to be PADI that we worked with for our Galaxy dive brand.
This is really interesting to get that message across about how important it is to choose the right partners that aren't only aligning on product and thematically, but also values. And of course, when you're building a destination from the bottom up, this really matters. I would love to talk a bit more about the ambassadorship and influencers and how you've worked in this area in just a few moments. But I think before we jump into that, tell us a bit about the product for the people who don't necessarily know why you've chosen diving as this really distinct kind of niche that you're carving out for Red Sea. Tell us a little bit about the product and what makes it so exceptional.
So we actually have established 3 brands within Red Sea Sports and Entertainment. One is Cocoon, which is our on-land adventures, so all the mountain biking, hiking, quad biking, as you'd expect. The other one is Water Sports, which is on top of the water. And the final one is Galaxia, which is our underwater. And for us, of course, we have a duty to talk about all 3 of those and all of the experiences. But diving in particular, when you look at what we have to offer in terms of the region, and I'm sure Ashley, who came to visit during the Ambassador Week and dived herself, I'm sure you can comment on the magnitude of the reefs and the quality of the diving that was experienced. We wanted to showcase that to the world. We're not necessarily seen as being synonymous with water sports. Saudi Arabia as a nation, of course, we have Riyadh, big city, very similar to Dubai in that respect. We have deserts. Of course, people associate us with hiking and desert sports. We're not at the moment synonymous with diving and water sports, despite the fact that we have world-class diving areas. So that, for me, was the thing that was a real core part of the brand partnership, which is why we went down the diving route.
It makes a lot of sense. And from your perspective, Ashley, obviously you're passionate about diving. You have to be if you work for PADI. Tell me from your personal passion and perspective, what is it that makes it a really exceptional product?
That's amazing. I think a destination that's new and upcoming and it feels untouched and unexplored. I think that visiting it for the first time, it's a dream because very few divers have experienced diving in Saudi Arabia in the past. And now more and more are coming and experienced, like Joanne said, the healthy reefs. They were gorgeous. That's not typical anymore, unfortunately, when you travel around the world. So when you see a healthy reef, oh my gosh, it is a dream, like I said. And the staff at Galaxia was incredible. And so that dive staff was very well trained, very experienced, and just top of the line dive staff, which makes your experience even better when you're out diving these gorgeous destinations and these gorgeous reefs, etc. So yeah, the people and the location was just incredible.
I think I'm just really excited just hearing, I can sense just how excited you are about how special this experience is. So I think this will probably come across to others listening and watching that this is really something, if you're passionate and interested in diving, it's really something very special. Let's talk a little bit about ambassadorship, because we know that across tourism and indeed other sectors, this is really important. We understand that other people can spread and share that message in a way that's more authentic, more compelling, and more convincing. But you've done something a little bit different here, if I understand correctly, which is not only to focus on ambassadorship, but also to really champion the role of female participation in sports here. And I know you've worked with some really interesting female ambassadors. I think you call them dive ambassadors or something like this, which is great. I love it. And I would love to know what the thinking is here, and especially why the female participation in the sport is something that you're very passionate yourselves about and really championing that.
For female participation in the sport of scuba diving is huge for PADI right now. Women is one of the fastest growing segments, so for diving globally. And we are just really focused on that because the male has been a dominated grouping in the sport of scuba forever. And we're just trying to undergo this kind of major shift, honestly, with women stepping in and not even just becoming divers, but professionals and instructors. And really, diving is so empowering for women. And I think it's just this skill-based, confident learning, and it's just connected to nature, as we know. So I think focusing on women wasn't just a gesture. It isn't. It's a real growth opportunity for PADI globally and internationally, really, because especially in Saudi, as we know, there has been challenges throughout for the females. And so allowing them to go diving and become professionals and make it even a profession in the future, I think seeing that and showcasing that is really important. And you're going to see that through storytelling. And so our female ambassadors, we wanted them to be the face of a lot of the campaign because we wanted to show that diving in Saudi Arabia to them is, again, it's amazing. Some of them are local and it's something they hadn't done for a while. And now they're able to go out there and experience it firsthand. And it's very special to them to come home and dive or live here and dive when they weren't able to maybe in the past.
And I think just to build on that as well, we could have gone down a more traditional commercial brand partnership route, right? And we could have put paid media behind it. And when you start to look at some of the research around the thing that makes the most significant difference to people's participation is seeing other people that do the sport that you can relate to. And a lot of research, go back many years ago with Sport England, where the key conclusion they made from that piece of research was you have to see it to do it. You have to see it to believe it. So then when you look at the ambassador program, and when we originally started talking about this with Ashley, we looked at all the ambassador portfolio, and we did start to actually pick out, particularly with Nouf and Taghrid, which are Saudi Arabian divers, we really wanted to make sure that we included those in the ambassador program so that if you're looking at coming to the Red Sea and you've never dived before in your whole life, but you're maybe a young Saudi female, it resonates and suddenly you're booking your very first course. We do a bubble maker, for example, which is for people who are 8 years old, and suddenly they're looking at booking a family trip with us. So that was really important when we looked at the whole portfolio.
Yeah, and I have to say, I've taken some time to look at the Instagrams and the other content from Taghrid and Nouf, and they are just so incredibly inspiring. They are not only exceptional divers, but they are really, really talented as well. So they seem to not just be your kind of traditional notion of an influencer or a content creator, but really have this creative talent in how they showcase that, which I imagine can be quite challenging given the conditions and everything else. Tell us about how you came to meet both Taghrid and Nouf and what that relationship has looked like.
What I would say is that we purposely wanted to go down a narrative of authentic stories. One point to note is that, believe it or not, 70% of the Saudi Arabian population is under 30 years old. So if you've got 70% of the population very young, they're very digital savvy. And so they can see through a lot of the more traditional paid media marketing tactics. And that meant that we had to make sure that we unlock this authentic narrative. And those two in particular absolutely showcase their childhood dreams, how they got into diving, why they dive at the Red Sea, what is it about diving that really relates to them. And so when we were talking to Ashley about who do we want it to come, that authenticity really needed to come through.
Yeah, and I think you can definitely see that when you see their work, and you couldn't find better ambassadors. And tell us about perceptions, because obviously I imagine there's been some work to challenge perceptions and to really showcase something which perhaps breaks boundaries in terms of working with female ambassadors.
It's like we were saying, it's the visibility, getting that out there and to help people participating, but also wanting to lead, because women can be leaders. And I think that those ambassadors, specifically Taghrid and Nouf, they are leaders, right? They're leaders in the sport, but also in the community. And so when sharing their stories, it's empowering others to get over some of these misconceptions, to your point. And it was so interesting when we shared these stories, I want to say on even the PADI channels, we would get people messaging us and talking about, oh my gosh, I never thought diving was for me until I saw this message, this beautiful video and so forth. And that's how you're going to get over those misconceptions and perceptions of, gosh, there's no diving in Saudi, or women can't dive in Saudi specifically. So it's really about storytelling and just real life experiences, showcasing those through the ambassador's eyes rather than through a brand's eyes.
And Joanne, how does that look for you? Because obviously you're thinking all the time from a marketing communications perspective about how to both mold and shape the image of the destination, but sometimes that is also challenging misconceptions or creating something that's more educational. I imagine with a destination that is growing and developing so rapidly, you also need to create an image from the ground up. What are some of the key priorities that you've sought to tackle in doing that?
Actually, in this instance, we didn't want to just show the diving, because particularly if you think about the ones that are very involved in the diving community, they're experts already. Of course, they're going to be interested in the reefs, in the quality of the diving. But the people that are just starting out and just getting into diving, they need to see a holistic destination. So when we invited everybody to dive in the Red Sea, it was about staying at Shibara, which is one of the most iconic hotels that we have as part of the Red Sea destination. And then they went over to Najuma, which is as equally iconic. And we wanted to capture all of the story from sunrise all the way through to preparation of the dive, getting onto the boat, the dive itself, into the evenings, the dinners, and to show the holistic destination because it gave it a sense of place. And I think often that does get lost with all of the thumb-stopping moments on Instagram. Of course, you've got that iconic image, but it loses that sense of place. And I think we wanted to make sure that we incorporated that. And to your point, it's because we wanted to make sure that we took away the misconceptions that Saudi is a place for diving. Saudi absolutely is a place for diving.
Yeah. And let's talk a bit about the practicalities of making a partnership work, because it can be quite challenging. As you mentioned, you need to find alignment. There's also logistical and very practical challenges and constraints. And there's that need to balance different objectives as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that partnership has worked from a day-to-day perspective? And what's the bigger long-term perspective on how you can take the work you've done today and continue and grow that looking forward?
I can take certainly the longer term vision piece, because for me, this was just the start. Of course, we have an established relationship already, like I said earlier, and there's an operational relationship that we have. But from a brand collaboration and from a marketing perspective, we're just getting started. We have a new resort just opened with Amala. We have more hotels opening, more dive centers opening. And when you look at the results of this activity that we just did, we can see that it did get global recognition. It did get 10 million impressions over a matter of 48 hours. We could see global reach in Europe and in South America. We had diversity of channel engagement across TikTok, and one TikTok post that had 1.5 million views, etc. And I could go on, but the point being, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a bit of a test and learn activation. And now we're looking into next year and just talking about what can we do together. But I also think, what can we do to boost it, where we think about more multi-channel activation, we can put media behind it, we can build some campaigns around it. So it's less of a pure brand ambassador week and more of a campaign initiative that goes across multiple channels.
And for you, Ashley, you must work with many partners, but what would you say has made this partnership really unique and perhaps surprising at times?
I think we're just really collaborative, and we had a similar mission and vision on what we wanted to get out of this, which again ended up being some really beautiful stories. And rather than it being really brand advertising focus at the moment, I think the storytelling elements of sharing not just Saudis, but also internationals coming into Saudi and telling their stories about how beautiful this area was. And they had seen it on a movie or a TV show when they were young. There was Rachel Moore, one of our ambassador divers, also told this beautiful story when she was 8 years old. She had seen a movie about Saudi Arabia and diving in the Red Sea, and her dream came to fruition. And that was an international coming into Saudi, and maybe Saudi not being on their top list of dive destination, but now she wants to move to Saudi and she loved it so much. It was one of those eye-opening moments for her, who's an international traveler. She dives everywhere in the world, and Saudi was one of the best places she's ever dove. So stories like that align globally as well as regionally, I think, are just really important. And again, it just shows that our brands are so aligned and how we can tell these stories and showcase these different areas of Saudi Arabia to the world too.
Yeah, it's always interesting with partnerships, isn't it? Because you often have to take some time to find your feet, to find what is that gel that makes you work really well together. And it's often after that initial partnership that you really understand how everything can connect and how you can build on top of that to drive future success. So it seems like you're very much at that stage where you've seen some real successes, some great engagement on some of the content. But also, I think to Joanne's point, you've got choices in marketing. You can put money behind it. You can focus on ambassadors. You can focus on many different elements. But I think what you're just talking about there, Ashley, is really where it hits the nail on the head. It's taking a dream, something that's purely aspirational, that people really wish to do at some point in their life. And it's also showing them that it's something that is attainable, and it's pushing them through that funnel. And it's pushing them through that funnel with convincing content, with words and real experiences that are lived by other people. And also, going back to Joanne's point, making sure the product exists and it is actually possible to do that. And so that's really great to see that coming together. And at the same time, Joanne, you spoke about many new developments that's still in the pipeline. So I guess we're only just at the very beginning of the real potential of this product. Yeah. Tell us a bit about the product itself. How many more opportunities are there along the way? What's the kind of time scale for that development process?
Actually, if I may just go back to your last question, when you work on a brand collaboration, often you do have slightly different objectives. So I know that when we go into next year, particularly when we've got a lot more hotels opening, one of my commercial objectives is going to be around driving length of stay. And it's going to be around driving total revenue per room. So when they come and stay, we want them to spend more money. I'm sure that's probably not going to be the same as PADI's objectives. But I think when you work on the type of collaboration which we did around ambassadors, and you just showcase and tell these really authentic stories, then actually you end up satisfying both brand objectives, and you do it in a very organic way. And we know that, particularly when I think about tourism and how does sports marketing and these kind of collaborations help to support the tourism KPIs, it absolutely does, because we don't want people to just come for one night, stay in a beautiful, iconic hotel, and they are, and then leave the next day. We want people to come for a whole week. We want people to come from across the world, and people aren't going to do that for one night. So by using these stories and these brand collaborations will directly impact the tourism KPIs that we have.
Really also key to building up value and really increasing the spend, retention, and repeat visits, which obviously is really key to a very diversified and resilient offer. And I just want to touch on that idea of sports tourism, I think, before we conclude and share our thoughts on this. We talk about sports tourism, and I think sometimes that puts it into a niche. It suggests that we're targeting quite a narrow group that are really passionate and that travel all around the world just for the passion that they have for that sport, whether it's diving, whether it's mountain biking, as you mentioned earlier. How do you see, Joanne, the blend and mix of travelers and people that you're reaching with this image development around the work you've done with PADI? Do you see it as really tapping into that very specific market, or do you also see additional opportunities to reach a broader market at the same time?
We have a view at the moment, which is Red Sea is open. We welcome everybody. And I think from a marketeer's perspective, that's really crucial, because we don't want to alienate anybody. What we do need to do is make sure that we add the credibility around certain sports so that we can build the equity of those brands. Let's say Galaxy diving brand, which we have. We need to make sure that we work with highly respected, well-known household brands like PADI to make sure that the PADI divers who are experts see us as being the place to go. But equally, we want somebody who is a family who have never dived before, that when they come to the Red Sea, they'll book a bubble maker course. And that's their first foot into diving, or I should say jump into diving, shouldn't I? And everybody in between. So from beginners to experts. And I think when you look at just marketing at the moment across the whole world, all the global brands are trying to do that. We need to make sure that we cast our net wide, but we have very clear view on what makes us credible and trustworthy, but equally what also makes us accessible to all.
That word accessibility is going to be really key, because I imagine also for Ashley, bringing new people into the sport is just as important as satisfying the existing community that you have.
Yeah, most definitely. It is. That's our number one goal, actually, is bringing more people into the sport, because then they can be advocates and help save the ocean as well. So yes, most definitely.
Which I guess is also why focusing on female ambassadorship and role models and representation then really matters, because it's also about communicating a very inclusive sport and demonstrating that actually there's some really brilliant female ambassadors there that can really champion that for other women. What would you say, if you reflect on the journey you've made so far, what for both of you would be the biggest learnings in doing this? Perhaps it's about the partnership together, but perhaps it's also about something bigger.
Let's see. Oh my gosh. What are my biggest learnings? That's a great one. I think it's just choosing the right partners to work with, because you really want to build a long-term relationship and not just have a one-off relationship where it's one-off and done. I think having it just not being a campaign, right? I really think that long-term partnership and community is really important. And then a new and upcoming destination, and looking for that, obviously, that really helps us showcase that diving is this global brand, and not everything has been discovered yet either. And I think that's really the exciting part for divers too, who travel the world. You hear about, of course, the Maldives and the Palaus and some of the bigger diver destinations, but then now there's Saudi Arabia that's coming up, and it can be the top of the list pretty soon. And it's just amazing to find these partners. And it's not just working with the easy destinations that you're used to, but looking at different areas that are up and coming and that are bound to be some of the top diving destinations in the near future.
How about for you, Joanne?
In this particular instance, my biggest conclusion was around genuine authenticity. Authenticity is a buzzword that is used throughout the whole marketing industry. It has to be authentic. And that can be staged. But I think what was really great was when we got everybody together, bear in mind that these 10 people didn't know each other at all, but we also invited people from PADI offices as well, including Ashley and the media team. And we built the relationship up over the week. And what came out of that was actually some really great organic, authentic content where they were just going off and doing their own thing and we were capturing it. And when you look at the metrics compared to some of the paid media activity, this content actually performed much better because people believed it when they saw it and they engaged with it. But equally, I would say don't plan too much because I think we did have a schedule for the whole week and actually things just happen and let them happen. And we found that actually, again, some of that content was the most engaging where we hadn't even planned it. Somebody just got on an e-foil and decided to go under the pods at Shibara. We hadn't asked him to, we hadn't planned it, and he got 2 million views off the back of it. Genuine authenticity and a bit of flexibility would be my conclusion.
I think that's a great note to end on. Sometimes the best things happen when they're not planned. And I guess that's also a key learning in partnerships, that sometimes the best partnerships and collaborations come when you just figure out how to make that really connect and work together and find your way working on that partnership in unity. This has been a fantastic conversation.
If I may, I think also often when you're working on partnerships, there's a lot of a focus on the commercial partnership. And I think in this instance, what was really great was it was a lot more about the relationship between the two brands. And as I said, this was just the start of hopefully many more to come. And I think it's really important that both brands, when you go into it, you realize that it's not just about the metrics, it's not just about the KPIs, and it's not just about the ROI. A lot of this is about creative ideas. What can we do next time? What can we do together? How do we build on this? So I think that's really important for the people getting into brand partnerships.
That's a really great takeaway, actually, because we're often very KPI driven and looking at the commercial outcomes. That will find its way eventually. You've got to establish the right basis, first of all. Thank you both so much for taking the time to share what I think is really fascinating insights. It's an amazing product, something really exciting being developed. And of course, it's a really interesting partnership that I think all of our viewers and listeners can really learn a lot from. So thank you so much for taking the time today, and thanks a lot for joining us. If you've enjoyed the conversation, join us in person at Arabian Travel Market 2026 in Dubai. Registrations are now open, so register now and be there with the global travel industry. This podcast is produced in partnership with the Digital Tourism Think Tank.